Right. Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the Audit and Governance Committee of Thursday the 26th of June. Welcome, just some housekeeping to start the meeting. There is no planned fire drill today, so if the fire alarm sounds, members of staff will guide you safely out the building. Please put your mobile phones to silent. Please speak clearly into your microphones, and please place your phones away from the microphones. Okay, the first item on our agenda, apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillors Richard Fry and James Knowles.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further apologies? No. Okay. Right then. Moving on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations?
Yeah, I'm a council appointed director of PS2.
Any further? No. Okay, moving on to item 3, exclusions of the press and public. Now, this is only if you've got any items on the minutes that the closed minutes that are forthcoming that you need to talk about. Is there? I don't see anyone indicating. Okay, so we'll move past that one then to the minutes. To confirm the open and exempt minutes of the meeting on the 26th of March 2025. That's the piece that includes the restricted bit. Councillor Bristow, is that to propose? Yes. And seconded by Councillor Makinson Sanders. All those in favour? Any against? Right, those are carried. And then we have the minutes of the annual general meeting on the 21st of May 2025, proposed by Councillor Makinson Sanders, seconded by Councillor Bristow. All those in favour of accepting? Okay, that's carried. Okay, Chair's update. I've got a few things for you. Just on a page. There we go. You have tabled a form on skills. Please fill this in and return it today, and that's the skills assessment form. Secondly, there was a government survey on remote and proxy voting at councils, and we will at East Lindsey District Council be expected to have a local scheme on our policy on remote attendance. Though aspects of that may be nationally set, so we were waiting for guidance. The Constitution Committee will be able to bring you something about that when the guidance is out. Thirdly, I attended a training session on pensions. That was an SCLCP training session on the 9th of June. On our local government pension scheme. That was really useful. It's a big responsibility, so it was interesting to learn more about that. Fourthly, I held a meeting with Councillor Leyland on the 6th of May. This is the liaison that we have between our committee and the exec board, in which we discussed attendance, local government reorganisation, the performance of audit and governance, and our improvement plan, timeliness of the finance papers and audits, and the exec's views. Fifthly, there's a training after the meeting, so please do hang on. There's a Towns Fund update and there's Treasury training. And sixthly, I'd also like to note that Councillor Fry has resigned from this committee, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank him for his work and for his diligence in scrutinising the work of this committee. Okay, thank you. Are there any comments on those remarks?
And for his attendance when he was portfolio holder, and it was quite useful to have somebody as a portfolio holder for finance come to our meetings. It's useful, and I think it's a bit of an omission that we don't have somebody. coming now, which is a shame. And I'd just like to personally apologise for not coming to the training. As you saw, my iPad was out of commission, so I wasn't able to do anything. So I do apologise to everybody.
Thank you, well said. Councillor Bristow.
Thank you. Yes, as far as the training goes, I did attend the training and I think it was a lot more useful when we had our own training, to be quite fair. I don't know if anybody else felt that way on that training, but it was, I thought it was more effective when it was here and we could ask our questions and it wasn't such a rushed environment that was frankly kind of overtaken by a couple of members of one council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Bristow. It was the Pier Point Anton Danny show, and we were there to be trained by the trainer, not listen to their waffle about how bad Boston is.
Councillor Mossop.
Well, same feedback, but I did think it was useful to have an external trainee, and in comparison to what we had for planning, which I'm afraid was done in-house, which was very disappointing. I think we just need to get the balance right sometimes, and unfortunately I felt very disappointed by planning, but more encouraged by what we heard from the trainer, not the other councillors, as the other members have said, about where they've been a CEO of a PLC.
Thank you.
They joined the training.
Yeah, it is accessible to other members. Yeah. Okay. Moving on from that to the actions. Okay. The actions which are on page 23 onwards. And let's see. I think there was one that was marked that not complete, which is combined assurance report. Mr. Edler.
Yeah, I think you have got the update there, and that is now complete. It's just not marked correctly in your agenda pack.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Are there any comments on those? Mr. Pilkington.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 23, the update about partnership working with internal drainage boards. The update after the 17th of June, the council internal drainage boards are members of the Lincolnshire Flood Risk and Water Management Partnership. Am I correct in saying that this is the partnership which the county council has wound up, has transferred its functions to another committee?
Sorry,
It's this one here.
yeah.
So as our partnership is.
Through you, Chair, if I may assist, that's a scrutiny committee which you're referring to, that was part of the county council's remit in terms of lead flood defence authority, but the partnership work with the agencies is still in existence, and we are a member of that along with the internal drainage boards.
Oh, thank you, John.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Makinson Sanders.
Well, I would like to say on page 27 how disappointed I am that we are buying solar panels from China. And I thought we'd come to the conclusion that we didn't want to trade with China, given that the employment practices with Uyghurs and various other racial people. And I was disappointed to see this. I know I was having a conversation with Councillor Simpson yesterday. Germans make perfectly adequate, in fact, even better equipment. So I'm surprised that we are trading with a nation that employs slave labour, basically. And on the one underneath, I'm amazed that we don't, the asset evaluation policy, that we're not reviewed for insurance. I was just surprised at the answer. That was all. I don't know if Section 151 officer can shed more light on it, or John can, but there were no established processes for maintaining the council's asset registers for insurance purposes. Well, I would have thought that was a necessity. So why don't we do that? What's the reason?
I think that's something that comes up later. Mr. Arnold, do you want to respond to that online?
No, we've lost you.
Can I just check you can hear me because
We can now.
thank you. So I think there may have been some misunderstanding here. The council does maintain asset registers of its fixed assets, and the valuation of those assets is tightly regulated within the accounting regulations that the council has to comply with, as do all local authorities. The asset valuations are reviewed annually by the external auditor as part of the audit process. And in recent years, all councils have had more queries in that regard than they had in the past, largely because under commercial accounting practices promulgated by the Financial Reporting Council, the whole system of valuation of assets in local authorities has become much more arduous than it was. That said, within the partnership, although there have been some queries across the three councils, I don't think any of the councils are in the position that many are in terms of incurring very high costs and very high commitments of staff time to resolve those matters. The issue around insurance is a different one, because the insurers, in insuring a risk, will value an asset very differently than it would appear in a local authority balance sheet. And so because the assets are valued, we start the game in a good position should we suffer the loss of an asset, and the loss will always be adjusted by the insuring party in order to mitigate their losses in actually paying over a sum to deal with the damage that is sustained by their client. So as I look at this, I can't see that there's anything deficient in the arrangements that we presently have. But of course, it's something that we continually look at. And at a partnership level, I am keen that we undertake some review work of our insurance arrangements more widely, if only because it's important to review those arrangements periodically on an ongoing basis, as it is with all business operations. And it's been a while since the strategic approach to insurance in the partnership has been looked at. So I wonder perhaps if there has been some confusion in members' minds about which of the several categories of valuation involving different stakeholders that might have been referred to in some of the discussions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, sorry, I'm even more confused now, because the reply doesn't sort of square with what you've just told us. And I'm concerned, it says we're not aware that there's a documented policy on this. Should there be one? And if there's not one, when will there be one?
No, there shouldn't be a policy relating specifically to insurance-related risks. You would expect those matters to be dealt with on a transactional basis should the council suffer any losses that it wishes to claim for against any of its insurance policies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any further questions on the actions?
Excuse me, can I just ask then, does this minute, this agenda item need to be rewritten, in your view, Mr. 151?
Mr. Arnold?
Sorry, I'm not clear what the question relates to. The question was raised. I believe it has been answered, both in writing and by my remarks just now. I'm very happy to have further conversations as you wish, Chair, but I don't believe there's an issue here that remains unanswered.
Okay. Mr. Pilkington. Oh, Mr. Silcox, go. Sorry.
Yes, number 94, which was the query about the consultant for the Horncastle Hub Solar PV. An update's been attached to Appendix A1. Yes, please, I would like to see the SLT briefing. What I was trying to understand with the question last time was not why we'd had a consultant, it was why the outcome was that we were procuring solar PV rather than going for a power purchase agreement, which would not have involved any capital payments by council. So I'm hoping that that may be answered in that SLT briefing.
Okay, well. Mr. Pilkington?
I'll come back to insurance under the internal auditors reports. Chairman, I'm not familiar with who the people are joining us online other than Mr. Boyle. What roles has Mr. Arnold got?
Okay, so we have James Gilbert, who's joining us for a later item, or actually for the item on local government reorganisation. There's Brendan Arnold, who's our Section 151 officer, James Boyle from KPMG, and Claire Goodenough, who is joining us for the internal audit report. Have I got everyone? Oh, and Suzanne Rolfe, who I can't actually see on the screen at the moment, but she's there. Yeah, who's joining us for the risk item. Okay. Yeah, apologies for not introducing everyone. Right. Okay. Moving on from actions to the item on local government organisation. Now, this came as a result of requests from members, and this item is really for members to ask questions with a focus on governance, and it's about local government reorganisation. James Gilbert is going to introduce this.
Yeah, good morning, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Sorry I can't be there this morning. I'm away on a course at the moment, so I'm dialing in. So if I just give a bit of context initially in terms of where we are at the present time as a council working with South Holland, the development of our bid, and a bit of wider context, it'll just be helpful to frame the conversation, I think. So you'll be aware that back in March, the council, East Lindsey, working with South Holland, submitted an interim proposal to government, and that had to be in by the 21st of March. And that was really our initial thoughts on what local government reorganisation might look like for Greater Lincolnshire. There were about 8 or 9 proposals or submissions from across Greater Lincolnshire, all setting out what different geographies could look like and what the impacts might be. Earlier this month, we received the feedback from the government, which was a little bit later than anticipated. It had been expected in early May, but I think was postponed due to the elections. So that landed at the beginning of this month, and essentially the feedback from government was to Greater Lincolnshire. It wasn't on specific proposals, but it gave 4 messages to us. Firstly, the proposals that had included Rutland in their geography would also really need to reconsider the impact on Leicestershire as part of the inclusion of Rutland. There was the consideration of neighbourhood committees. So the government indicated they would like to see neighbourhood committees as part of any proposal. And those that are familiar with the work that's taken place in North Yorkshire around local government organisation will be aware of kind of the model they've implemented there around neighbourhood committees. They reinforced the point about sharing data and the importance of councils sharing data consistently across the councils to help one another develop their proposals. And finally, the point made was that the building blocks for districts should really be the starting point for redefining what the council geographies should look like under a unitary model. So try to avoid splitting up districts if you can, was the message that was taken, because I think it added another complexity to what's already quite a complex process. So at the moment, we know there's a number of bids being developed across Greater Lincolnshire. East Lindsey and South Holland are working together on a bid, and no doubt you'll have seen the paper that went to the executive to consider the governance arrangements in relation to that bid and also the funding. That was approved at both East Lindsey and South Holland. It would have been in May. We know the City of Lincoln Council are working on a bid at the moment. North Key and South Key are developing a bid, and we understand the County Council are as well. So there's a number of bids likely to be submitted to government in time for the deadline of the 28th of November. It's been indicated to us that Lincolnshire is on for local government reorganisation from 2028. So that means the new arrangements would come in place, subject to there being no change in direction from government from 2028, with a shadow authority formed in 2027. So the suggestion is the 2027 elections will be for the new unitary authorities. At the moment, this council, working with South Holland, are developing their bid. which has to be in for the 28th of November. We've got some external support from Commercial Gov, who supported us with the interim proposal, and we're working up that bid in line with on the back of the interim proposal. It follows the model identified in the interim proposal, basically, which is the partnership sub-region, East Lindsey, Boston, South Holland, along with North Key and South Key, and the two going south to make a southern unitary, and then a northern unitary consisting of the existing two northern unitaries, along with the City of Lincoln and West Lindsey. We have got member briefings on a monthly basis established, and group leader briefings, so we're going to keep members informed as the bid continues to develop. But I guess your principal interest is in relation to your role as an A&G committee, probably in the implementation phase or the transition to the new authority, and what your role will be around overseeing risk during that period. Having had a conversation with John Medler, we were thinking kind of what the role could be during that period, and we think the role is very much business as usual for the committee. It's around ensuring the internal controls remain robust as we approach the reorganisation and transition period, recognising the organisation will be going through quite a period of change, and quite a significant amount of focus will be on ensuring that our existing services continue to be the best they can be. Our internal controls are still strong, but then looking to what the new authority looks like and how we transition our services into that new authority and a workforce in a way that has limited impact. So that's where we're up to at this point in time, Councillor. It is unlikely that we'll know the outcome of any submission for LGR until the middle of next year. So there's quite a while until we know any detail around the Secretary of State's direction of travel. We know there'll be a consultation period in respect to the final proposals. Surrey, for example, is out to consultation at the moment, if anybody wants to take a look there and see what's happening in that particular area. But that's kind of what I know at this point in time. And I've kind of shared that with the committee now. So there will be regular member briefings going forward. Happy to take any questions and answer them where I can.
Okay, thank you, James. Councillor Makinson-Sanders.
We are a partnership, James, and I think for anybody who's tuning into this who isn't familiar with things, would ask why it's only East Lindsey and South Holland working together on this proposal. And I think we need a bit of an explanation for people and perhaps other councillors who don't understand why it's only 2 out of the 3 in our partnership.
Thank you, James. Do you want to respond, James?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, very simply, Boston are still considering their position at this moment in time. They haven't decided whether they want to be part of our proposal, part of another proposal, want to develop their own, or wish to remain silent. So there will be discussions at Boston for their position to emerge over the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, have you got any further questions? Mr. Pilkington, please.
2 things. Firstly, just to reiterate what we discussed at the last meeting, was that at the moment, our internal auditors are from the county council, and depending on who merges with who, the internal audit arrangements may have to change. So we just need to keep that on the radar screen. And the second one is obviously to think about in any new authorities what the audit and governance committee looks like, because with fewer local authorities, that's fewer councillors, that's fewer independent members scrutinising things. Yet what they will be scrutinising in the future is a bigger asset register and bigger risks for a larger authority or authorities. So the actual risk of things going wrong is probably going to increase. So we need to think about how audit and governance committees will operate in the new arrangements.
Thank you. Good points. Councillor Mossop, please.
Yeah, thank you. Well said, Chris. I think that's really key to it, because I was going to focus in on neighbourhood committees that, and I think it would be really important for us to see what they are doing in North Yorkshire, whether it is a success or not, because I think that, because I think they may well be key to doing some of this, clearly scrutiny, but also governance and checking on that. And I think that there will be a role for them at that level, because other than that, there's going to be a huge democratic deficit. I think what's happening in Boston is also a serious risk to the partnership, and I think we need to talk about that in our other discussions, probably with Suzanne, and what this council is going to do about that, because by the sound of things, 2 years is going to pass very, very quickly. This is extremely going to be extremely rushed. We've got to get a consultation and actually get people engaged and interested in this big, dry old subject. But it's very, very important to local people because they're going to lose a lot of locality when this happens in terms of representation, because there'll be few of us doing the jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
I've just got a comment, which is I think this is going to be an absolute disaster for our residents.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bristow.
I am questioning why they're going to bother with the consultation when they ignored the consultation results on the LGR overall. Clearly, the response was, we don't want this, and it just got pushed forward anyway. So I am questioning the value of another consultation that is probably going to be ignored. Thank you.
I think that's possibly more a question for government. Councillor Macon-Standers.
At the Independence Conference in January this year, we did meet some members of the Yorkshire, whatever you want to call it, a combined authority or whatever. They went down from something like 232 councillors to 99. They said it was bedlam. They said the whole thing was just a nightmare and wasn't working very well. So we'd be quite happy to get in touch with our fellow independent councillors and have a bit more feedback, because I think they found it was rushed, lack of democracy was evident. They weren't very satisfied with it, full stop.
Thank you. Mr. Silcox-Crowe.
Yeah, a question for James, just for my understanding. You listed a group of different, you listed multiple councils putting in multiple options for how they combine to be different unitary authorities across Greater Lincolnshire. Am I understanding that correctly? Because I thought that all of these councils would have already spoken to each other and it would be a single bid to government to say, this is how we're going to build it.
James?
Would you like me? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. So, I mean, there have been conversations between councils and the conversations remain ongoing. I think at the moment there's different political directions of travel in terms of what makes the best case. And each of those authorities and the groups of authorities that are working together at the moment are in a position where there's likely to be multiple proposals that go into government.
So who makes the decision at the end? Central government? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's a decision for the Secretary of State, as I understand. So the invitations come from the Secretary of State to all the councils in Greater Lincolnshire to put forward proposals. Those that wish to submit an interim proposal had to do so by the 21st of March. Those that wish to put in a final proposal have to do so by the 28th of November. It will then go to a period of consultation for those proposals that meet the criteria. Thereafter, the Secretary of State will make a decision on which is the right model, in their view, to implement based on those that have been received, or if none of those meet the criteria or the thoughts of the government, they can propose their own solution.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no further questions from members, I have a couple of questions. Really looking at practical issues. First of all, I want to make sure that the lessons that we've learned in forming 10 constitutions for 10 councils are captured and help with forming a constitution for a new unitary or new unitaries. And so I just want to ensure that process is clear to us. And secondly, in 2027, there's going to be an election for a unitary or unitaries, but presumably at that point we will still be running East Lindsey as East Lindsey. So I was trying to figure out how that would work out in terms of the governance of East Lindsey. So just a little bit more clarity on how that process will work, or is proposed to work, will be welcome. So those 2 points really, a bit more clarity.
Thank you. I mean, I'll tell you what I can at the moment. I am kind of looking into a crystal ball a little bit though. I mean, in terms of the constitution for the new authorities, I'm guessing that will be for those authorities to agree their new constitution. And one would hope they'd take learning from the authorities that have existed previously. Also, there'll be an LJ model constitution they might use as their starting point, then develop into constitutions for the new unitaries as they're formed. Sorry, remind me of the second question, Councillor.
It's about the 2027 elections.
Apologies. Yes. Yeah.
And
so in terms of the 2027 elections, what I anticipate will happen, subject to there being no change to government timescales, I think they'll extend the existing members by a further year. So they operate as members rather than having an election in 2027. That then takes place in 2028. Sorry, they then see the authority through to 2028 when it ceases to exist. So during that time, all the existing governance would exist, and you would have the role as a committee as you do now until that council ceases to function.
Just to note that is explicitly not what members received in an email from Councillor Leyland recently about the local government reorganisation. That it was explicitly that we will have new elections, and so rather than delaying the election. So
my understanding, and again, we'll get guidance probably middle of next year in relation to this, is that there will be elections in 2027 for the new councils that have been formed. That will then form the shadow council to oversee the transitional arrangements, and then there will be the existing district councils extended by a further year. So essentially you'd have a shadow council operating in parallel to the existing councils. You would all be extended by a further year through to 2028, at which point you would cease to become members. And at that point, the shadow authority will become the substantive authority and take on the powers and controls that you have, is my understanding. But there will be guidance, no doubt, to us as we get further into the process.
I look forward to that guidance, because that's confusing. Yes, thank you. All right. If there are there no further questions and comments? Thank you very much, James, for that, and we'll make sure that those comments are recorded and taken forward.
Thank you. And I would encourage as many members as possible to attend the member briefing that's taking place week commencing the 7th. Thank you again for the invitation this morning.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 8. Where are we? Risk report. So this is the Q4 risk report for 24 to 25, and this is Suzanne Rolfe to report, to present the report. Thank you, Suzanne. Suzanne's on the line.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody. Yes, this is the usual quarterly risk report as at the end of March 2025. So for Q4, the strategic and partnership risks have been thoroughly reviewed again in Q4 with details in the tables in the covering report. So that's from page 30 in your papers. The Section 151 officer is reviewing the finance risks to feed into Q1 reporting. So I'm sure in your finance items later, there's quite a few changes recently. So that will all feed into the risk register for Q1. So that will look quite different in future. There's also some duplication that we identified and the retention of staff risk. So that you'll have noticed, I think we talked about it at the last meeting, is in both places at the moment. It's in the council risk register, but also in the partnership risk register. So to avoid that duplication, we're going to remove it from the council only one and leave it in the partnership risk register, so we can keep an eye on that but not duplicate. There's also a risk around domestic retrofit programme. So we've had that in for a little while because of the uncertainty around the funding. That's been in the strategic risk register, but the 3-year funding is now confirmed. So the recommendation is to remove that risk from the strategic risk register going forward. And then you have 2 new risks, which again we talked about in draft at the last meeting, but they're now in your papers in front of you, that around Invest East Lindsey and the potential for a court case. So those 2 risks are now added in there. I would just draw your attention to the update to the fraud risks. So that's from page 32 of your papers, paragraph 2.7. So as we committed to at the last meeting, we've done a thorough review of the wording and the treatments for the fraud risks because it's 12 months since they were first identified. There have been a few changes in there around procurement risk. So the risk score has reduced on procurement risk because of the procurement card audit follow-up. So there's some good assurance from that follow-up audit that allows us to reduce the risk score. It's still a medium risk overall, but the score has come down. And then the credit refund and income fraud risk. Again, the risk owner has been able to review the checks and controls that are in place. We have greater assurance on those now. So the likelihood has reduced for that risk. Just picking up the conversation you've just had on the last item, SLT are reviewing the partnership risks around trust and around partnership working and LGR at their next meeting, which is in a couple of weeks. So that will feed through into your Q1 risk reporting, and happy to take any comments to feed into that discussion that SLT are having. And just an update on something that's not in the papers yet, but we are coming to the end of an internal audit of the risk registers, and we haven't got the final report yet, but there are some really good recommendations in there around changes to the way we report things. So I know we've had several conversations about how to make it as easy as possible to follow the risks, to have it as readable as we can, but a nice good summary on the front. And the auditors have been able to give us some really good suggestions on how we can improve that covering report so it includes more detail for you to be able to track what's coming through. So just to let you know that that Q1 report should be quite different and easier for us to follow. So we're very grateful to audit colleagues for those recommendations, but you'll get the detail of that at the next meeting. So happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. Councillor Bristow.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you very much for the report. I've got a couple of questions and a few comments. I'm glad to see ELDC 30 and 31 put in for the company insolvency and loss of court case. I'm assuming that court case is referring to one that has been ongoing. Okay, and the company insolvency is marked as medium, but later on in some of the papers, I kind of got the feeling it might be a little more than medium if Investees Lindsay doesn't get the split it needs. So I'm wondering about how we arrived at medium. The local government reorganization is identified as a medium and likely on the table on page 31. I thought that should be high and certain or critical and certain. I was kind of questioning why that wasn't actually read, because we know it's going to happen. We've just heard that, you know, the best case scenario sounds like we don't spontaneously combust until 2028, but it is going to have it's a massive risk to our council because we're going to cease to exist. The last comment I had, and it's a question, and you might have just mentioned something about it, on the partnership risk on page 32, trust has gone, the risk involving trust has increased. Is that because of the uncertainty of the local government reorganization that, you know, we're still hiring people, but, you know, can we not give somebody the assurance that their job will be there? I hear things on the grapevine that concerns, you know, about, you know, people now with the uncertainty. Do we have a trust problem now because of uncertainty that frankly is nothing we can actually help? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll try to answer those questions. I'll go in reverse if that's all right. I'll start with the last one. So partly that was my mistake in the covering report because that's included some details that aren't yet agreed. They're going into the Q1 report, so that was a timing issue. So that's part of the discussion that SLT are having around that area, and I can feed into them your comments and the comments that we've had on the previous item, and we'll get much more detail back to you for your Q1 report. And that also covers some of the LGR risks that you've talked about today and just mentioned. It is moving very, very quickly. So this was the risk register at the end of March. I think there's a lot more detail now that we have, and that's why SLT will be doing a thorough review of those particular risks at their meeting, and that will come forward to you in Q1. So I've picked up everything that's been said so far. Happy to pick up any other comments now to feed into that discussion. And then I think we'll have a better understanding of the risks at your next meeting. Going back then to the medium risk for Invest East Lindsey, I will double check with the risk lead officer about the reasoning behind the way that risk is set, and just double check if there's some more detail that we can put into that. I think you know it much better than I do after your update at the last meeting, but I will double check that and come back to you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Councillor Mossop.
Yeah, thank you. It's more of the same really on this one in relation to this trust issue, and I just wanted to endorse what has been said by Councillor Bristow really. Currently you've got it in the partnership risk bit about the treatment being tolerated. Are you suggesting therefore that there actually might be that will change from, you know, from that 4T to treat rather than tolerate? Because I think I do detect, and from some of the discussion earlier that we've said, I do detect a change in the relationship between the partners a little bit, and I don't know whether that's being felt by senior leadership team, but if that is the case and that trust is changing, then, you know, we need to be treating rather than tolerating.
Thank you. I don't know what the outcome of that discussion will be, but I will feed that into to SLT so they're aware.
Thank you. Councillor Makinson Sanders.
Well, 04 on page 37, with the loss of the drainage committee, I do actually feel that that is quite a high risk to us, and we've got continued partnership working. Well, I think that partnership has been eradicated to a certain extent. I feel a bit guilty saying this in front of Danny, but there is a challenge on that one, and if we're not working with the county council on it, we're not serving our residents right well. So I think that's a risk. The capacity to deliver the work programme for partnerships councils, I do think that is a high risk, and it does worry me because I think we're already struggling, and it says if it can't be accommodated within existing resources, and that is a huge worry. Low frequency of communications, I think our communications are poor in this council. I don't think they work. That was picked up by the peer group as well. I agree about the Invest East Lindsey thing. I think that time is of the essence to sort that out. The long-term health issues in the local population, deprivation, wider determination of health, that is a huge, a huge challenge for this council. We are right near the bottom of the health figures for this country, and I go to health scrutiny, and I know that getting staffing and everything else on the East Coast in particular, and in areas of high deprivation, it is a huge challenge. It's a really uphill struggle. I would have had that as a high risk because we're an aging population, and you know, we just get the thumbs down on all of it, and and the local government funding, delivering opportunities identified in the partnership business case and realising the planned savings. Now, I presume this is a risk register for 3 councils. There's a risk to this council because we are the council with the money, and we are paying 46, or depending on whoever tells you the latest number, 46 or 48% towards running the 3 councils. Are we getting the value for that? Because I know an awful lot of time and attention is going to one of the others, which does have a worrying financial risk at the moment. I think that is a huge risk to this council, but if this is for the partnership, then I can understand. I wouldn't have had it as, I don't think it's a minimum risk. I think it's a huge risk for this council. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll feed those into the lead officers for the various risks so they can pick that up for Q1.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr Pilkington.
Yeah, the risk relating to long-term balancing of the budget and constraints, and part of the causes behind that are the levies from the internal drainage boards. Now, I did catch something in the news, I think last week, that the government was going to be giving some money to the authorities most impacted by IDB levies. And I just wondered if John or anyone else could sort of comment on whether that's correct or not and the details of it.
Brendan, would you like to answer that, because you'll know best?
Thank you, Chair. The position has been that those councils affected by this issue, of which there are many, and there's a national lobby group that has been set up that the 3 councils within the partnership are playing a part in. The government had originally indicated that it would release information about the support in financial year 25-26 when it released the comprehensive spending review results. I think it was last week or the week before. In the event that did not happen, and the expectation that we now have is that that information will be released before the end of June. Well, we're at the 26th of June, so Chair, on the basis of the information we currently have, we would expect some information in the very near future around how the government is going to support the affected councils in the current year. Of course, there's then going to be a further issue for all of the councils in that group for financial year 26-27, because all of them will need to set their 26-27 budgets, very likely without confirming support or the level of it from government for financial year 26-27. So as part of discussions to balance the budgets for all 3 councils within the partnership, those are conversations that we will, as a community, need to have en route in terms of how that is fed into the budget calculations. So as soon as any information is released, I'll take an action to send information to committee members on what the position is that we find when the government makes its announcement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that report, Suzanne, and we'll move on to the next item now. Thank you. Right, item 9, the internal audit report and opinion for 2024-25, and this is Claire Goodenough, who's joining us online to introduce this report. Claire.
Thank you very much, Chair. So good morning all. For those who I've not met, my name is Claire Goodenough and I am your Head of Internal Audit. Matt would normally come to these meetings, but now Matt's left us. We've had a change around and I'm supporting the new manager, Mark Harrison, and delivering this, which is my audit opinion, so only I can deliver my audit opinion to you. Apologies I can't be with you face to face today. Unfortunately, I've had an operation, so I'm not able to drive, but for future meetings, we do expect to be present to start to get to know the councillors as well. So I'm introducing my Head of Internal Audit report. This covers the statutory requirements relating to audit quality, audit conformance, and the approach that we've taken, or I've taken, in producing my opinion. My opinion takes into account the results of consultancy work as well as advisory work, along with other governance documents that are produced by the council. There were 2 consultancy-based assignments carried out as part of the plan agreed for 24-25, and the advice arising from those is reviewed and included within my opinion as well. The report contains the framework that I use for my assessment. I include that so you can see what would be what would be the categories, sorry, put my teeth back in, what would be the categories that I would make that assessment against. I review the framework every year, and there's been no changes since the review for the one that was reviewed last year. So that allows the committee to do that direct comparison between last year's and this year's, so you can see the direction of travel. My opinion is shared within the report and gives the council an adequate assessment rating on your governance, risk and control environment for the council. It includes a brief statement on suggested improvements, and also they focus on your outsource activities, but they are not sufficient to cause a negative impact, on my opinion, for the governance, risk and control. From the audit plan that's been delivered, they are isolated to 2 specific areas which are included in the report. There is also additional comment in the report on the wider elements of those 2 limited assurance awards that were made during the year. Towards the rear of the report, our performance indicators are included in there, which show that client feedback overall has been very good. Unfortunately, our performance indicators have not met my expectations, and the change of audit manager and working with the new manager is expected to improve those throughout 25-26. And there's some plans to have those conversations with your section 151 so that we're on the same page with our expectations. I personally will maintain a watch on this because I think it's very important that we don't let our standards slip. And finally, Appendix 1 lists the audit work carried out throughout the year under the definitions for each of the assurance ratings that have been awarded. I am very happy to take any questions on the report, the process or the statutory functions which underpin this work.
Thank you very much, Claire. Councillor Bristow, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Claire, for this report. I have a couple of questions I'll ask. Starting on page 60, on the 2 limited assurance items, reading on the insurance one, I don't know if this feeds back to the conversation we had earlier with Mr. Arnold. On the limited assurance review insurance, I have a question that says, does this go back to our internal value, or is this something that is on his plate? And if so, is there something we can be doing as a council to support him, if indeed it is his remit? On the reconciliations, there's a note saying that 2 audit testing, 7 accounts have been completed, 2 had not been completed monthly. Are these now complete, and what improvements are being made to support these reconciliations, either an IT solution, any temporary staff? I know getting staff is a problem, particularly on the finance side. You mentioned change of audit management in your recap. I had that circled on page 61 for the details. Is that the change between the gentleman and yourself, or is that something else? Because I know the change to KPMG happened last year, so I'm assuming that's something more internal. My other question is on page 63 for the performance measures. I'm looking at timescales, individual assurance assignments. We've got some low numbers here, 59% individual audit assignment and timescales delivered as agreed in the last internal audit plan, and then 75%, which I guess is on the cusp. Again, is that something internally here that maybe we have officers that need some support? I know our officers are working so hard every day and working a lot of hours. Is there something we can do to support them if indeed, again, this is part of their remit and that we've got less than 6 and 10 that are on time? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bristow. Claire, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you very much for your questions, Councillor Bristow. And it's lovely to see that you've read the report thoroughly, which is always very nice to and appreciate that. So I'll start at the top. So the insurance question about how you can go back to support. We haven't looked at the overarching value that Brendan talked about earlier. We look at systems and processes. So the systems and processes that were in place when we looked at this are what we're making comments on. So there are a number of areas where systems and processes were missing, or the accountability and the the local governance, not talking about corporate governance, the local governance wasn't where it needed to be, which is what's resulted in the limited assurance. There are recommendations within the report that will help to address some of those aspects where there needs to be that greater collaborative working between the partnership and PSPS, so that we are getting that assurance and that information is starting to pull through so that we can provide the assurance there. So because it's separate, I don't think it's anything that the committee was talking about earlier in relation to the questions you had for Brandon, but I don't know whether Brendan wants to come in on that once I've finished. So hopefully that answers your insurance question. In relation to the bank reconciliation, again, I can't comment on the work that's happened as a result, because that's not something that we've done a follow-up review on yet. It's something that is in the plan for this year for us to look at. There were only two. The officers have worked hard to catch up with the backlog. You can see there's a lot of work gone into trying to catch up. Again, the limited assurance on this comes from sort of the lack of process that's in place, and sometimes the lack of that adequate oversight and monitoring that we would like to see that's not been there. That may be a symptom of the fact that they've been playing catch up, but we're hoping that we'll see that next time when we go back and do the follow-up review in relation to looking at those. I'm sure Brendan will be able to update you as to whether those two outstanding ones have now been completed. Just picking up on the audit management change. So you used to have Matt Waller would attend your meetings and he would attend the senior leadership team meetings. Matt's left us now, so I've appointed one of our experienced internal auditors, Mark Harrison, as the audit manager. But Mark and I are going to manage your oversight together. Matt didn't want any involvement from me, whereas moving forward, I'm very keen to be involved in understanding more about how your council works and understanding how we can make our delivery to you better and support your officers better. So we're not changing the organisation, it will still come through us, but you will see me more and you will see Mark more, so that we can start to get to know you better. Having looked at some of the interactions that have taken place, I think it might be helpful for me to offer you some support and training that could be useful for the committee in understanding how we deliver assurance and what some of the work that we do could add value for you. So again, I think it's important that we get to know one another. Although I'm employed by Lincolnshire County Council, any work I do for you is directly to support you. I am your head of internal audit at this point. So I think it's important we get to know one another and we start to establish what that can look like. So just picking up on the performance management, the performance measures, absolutely bitterly disappointed at the 59%. I think that sort of stems from us not necessarily having access to the data. So at the moment, if any of the auditors want to have access to data, they have to arrange to sit with somebody to go through that data. There's been reported to me a little bit of reluctance as to wanting to give us access. So that's something that Mark and I and Brendan are going to sit down and look at as we move forward, because as auditors, we should have access to your data, which makes our testing much smoother, and it makes what we're able to offer you have much more value rather than having to sit with a member of PSPS while they decide what they will show us. It means that our assurance provision is deeper for you. Therefore, the outcome that you get on the assurance rating has much more reliance and resilience to it. That hasn't happened this year. That comes down to how we've possibly managed that relationship and the contract as well, which I am aware we need to make improvements to, and that's why I'm working with Mark to make sure we improve that. In relation to the 75%, which is about issuing reports within 10 days of completing the audit, that is something that hopefully you can support with your officers. That's been information coming late to us, things promised to us at certain points that haven't come through at the time for us to be able to issue those reports. So again, it's something that we'll work as a three together on, so that we can start to get that. We can start to do our planning better, so that officers are informed, and start to make sure that the message is cascading down to the relevant people, that audits are coming up, so they're more prepared for us coming in, and we're more prepared to be clear on what we want and to chase sooner and escalate to me if that information isn't coming through, or escalate to Brendan if that information isn't coming through. So hopefully I've answered all your questions there, Councillor Bristow, but please come back if I haven't.
Thank you.
No, that was absolutely brilliant, and I'm very disappointed to hear that you've received some reluctance. I'm a clerk to 2 councils, and the last thing I would ever say to an auditor is, no, you can't see that, or let me filter this, because that's a big red flag for me as an individual. So thank you very much. Appreciate your candor.
That's all right. Just to clarify, we're not saying people don't want us to. It's the reluctance to. We haven't got the time to sit with you and show you this. It's a different thing. Now, we can't say as auditors we have unfettered access, which we should have because of that restriction, but nobody's come to me to say there's any suggestion that people are hiding things from us. It's just that process of having the time to look at things that we would like to look at in our own time.
Thank you. Councillor Mossop.
No, it's Mr.
Oh.
Pilkington.
Oh. Mr. Pilkington.
Thank you. I was going to ask a similar question to Councillor Bristow. Interested very much in your answer about the insurance. And I look forward to us getting a report in the near future about how our systems and processes are being improved. Again, I was quite surprised and concerned about the observations about getting access to data. I'd like some reassurance that the relevant managers instruct the relevant staff to make time to provide the auditors with access. And my other question was, and I might not have interpreted this right, I couldn't see anything in your report which red flagged anything as low assurance. But on page 99 of the overall meeting pack, it's in this later document, it just said internal audit report 24-25, red assurance up from 0% to 1%. Perhaps it's an editing thing, or perhaps I'm misunderstanding something.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Pilkington. From an audit perspective, so our audit function is independent of anything to do with management, and we have that unbiased approach. So I report on the work that we deliver in that independent testing process. That's what goes into my audit opinion, and they're the reports, the progress reports that you get that come through the team on a regular basis. As part of that, something that we deliver or we facilitate is the combined assurance work. Now, we don't do that for all the clients, and it's not something that we offer for Lincolnshire County Council. That's up to the discretion of your council, whether that's something you want. But that work is a facilitated conversation with management. It is not independently tested, and it's not independently and unbiased in its opinion. So I don't place any reliance on your combined assurance work, because that's auditors having a conversation with heads of services, assistant directors, to see what they feel their view is and where they feel their risks or their assurance is in relation to their view. So if somewhere in that document it talks about a move from your red ratings have gone down or gone up, that isn't something that has been endorsed by the audit team. It's something that's facilitated by the audit team. Hopefully that helps.
Okay.
Okay, you happy with that? All right, Councillor Mossop.
Yeah, well, I think it's always very good, Claire, to have a change of personnel, so welcome. And I look forward to that, the working relationship we have, and also the idea of having 2 pairs of eyes with Mark Harrison. I think that's a good thing as well, to have that change. And I think having both internal, external auditors relatively new to us is good and refreshing. So thank you for coming along. I look forward to meeting you thereafter. I was going to ask really about the insurance again. I didn't realise that was in the programme. I must have missed that from previous time. I didn't know about it. And you know, my question really is about why that retendering exercise didn't happen, and it required a postponement for that year. You know, in that year we could have lost money. We could have gained, you know, we could have found a cheaper alternative. It happened to me this year actually, and I was very pleased to see that by having that sort of refreshment of looking at reviews and insurance in this particular case, with a new pair of eyes meant that we could save a little bit of money. So in terms of that, I would just wonder why that happened. I don't think the explanation in the text gives me that very clearly. And then my other question will be about follow-up reviews. Presumably they are in the programme for both this and the bank recs as well, and that those I want just to seek reassurance that those will be followed up in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mossop. So in relation to the insurance, it was my view from reading the working papers and reading the report is that it was the project management around the retendering that failed. There were some symptoms that we've included in the report around sort of lack of designated roles, lack of that key oversight, which may have impacted on some of the engagement they got. They didn't get good engagement in relation to that project management, and so it was a project management failure, in my view, that resulted in the retendering not going ahead. That retendering highlighted some of the gaps within effective risk management for the project, as well as effective risk management for the overall insurance service that's running. Just moving on to the follow-up reviews, when I come and meet with you separately, I'll give you an update on how we do our follow-up reviews. Unfortunately, the way follow-up reviews have been done previously, there's nothing scheduled in for quarters 1 and 2. However, moving forward, we will give you reports on the resultant risk as a result of what we've found from the follow-up reviews, as well as whether resultant actions are being implemented and how adequately they've been implemented. It's again one of those changes that comes with having a fresh pair of eyes, a new way of looking at things, and we're keen that you understand how we do things differently from how you've had them before, as a result of that change of management. They are both in the programme. They are things that will be picked up. We can't give you a timing for that because they are led by the management actions and when they've been agreed that they will be implemented. So part of our processes moving forward is we review the actions that management have said they'll do and the date in which they've said they'll do them. We expect the date of a management action to be implemented associated with the level of risk that we've given it. So, for example, if we found a high risk, we would expect that to be implemented in around about the 3-month mark. If the date proposed isn't the 3-month mark, we'll talk to officers to understand why and then pencil in the review at the appropriate time so that we can go back and check at the earliest opportunity that those have been implemented or not implemented, as the case may be. There are occasions when management actions can't be implicated, can't be implemented, and it's important that we understand why so that we can provide that professional judgment to give you assurance it's an adequate reason to be pushed back, or actually it's a reason to be pushed back that maybe shouldn't have been. However, this is now the new date. And those pushback actions are more important to us than the original actions because it means there's been a delay at one point or another. So when I come and talk to you, and it would be great if I can talk to Laura about getting a time for Mark and I to sit down with you and give you that opportunity to ask any questions about how we work and what that looks like. That will be the time when I'll be able to share with you what those follow-up reviews actually look like from this point moving forwards. But Mark does know, Mark has put them in the plan, and Mark is very keen to engage with you in that same level that I would engage with you. So whether you get me or whether you get Mark, you will get the same level of quality service.
Thank you. That's very reassuring, and also the offer of training, I think, will be very welcome to the committee as well in understanding this. I think you've highlighted some worries to me. You know, the timeliness in timescales, the 59% again, which is in the report, obviously. You know, I think that is a concern. Whether we can actually get that down, I don't know, and that means it might be that it's symptomatic of the pressure of work that all our staff is under to get to deliver this. But there might also be, as with some of us intimated, that it might be a cultural thing, that there is a reluctance to get those questions answered in in a timely manner to auditors. And I think that's a cultural thing. I in my own work, I feel reluctant sometimes to answer all the questions that it's the last thing I want to do. I want to get on with the job, you know. And so I understand that difficulty that you're having to come in, helicopter in and talk to members of staff. But I think there may well be something else if we don't get that percentage down. There may be other things that we can do in terms of helping our employees to understand that it's an important part of governance. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think it's also worth pointing out that there are things we can do in our team. We can perform better in our team. It's not just about the officers, it's our auditors as well. And so we have quite specific ways of working with our other clients, and that hasn't necessarily transferred well across to you. So Mark's input with the team is helping them, our auditors, to understand what that looks like from our perspective as well. So I am confident things will improve because we're supporting our internal staff to help them improve while we work alongside your officers. So it's not just on your officers at all. It is, you know, 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, half a dozen of the other from our side as well.
Thank you. My question really is, should we be summoning officers to this committee to answer for these limited assurances? I appreciate they're not low assurances.
I don't think so. It's a power that I would suggest using quite sparingly because it can damage the relationship with audit if people are reluctant to be as open and honest with us as they should be, if they think they're going to get hauled in front of somebody and held to account for a system or process that probably happened 3-4 months ago by the time it's actually reported to the committee. I think my personal experiences and what I do with other committees is if that's necessary, we have that conversation in advance to talk around significant systemic concerns we've got. We are not at that point. We're not even close to that point with yourselves. So at the moment, I don't think so. I think it's worth giving the officers the opportunity to put things right with our support and guidance that goes into the report, to give them that opportunity. If that's necessary, I think that would be something that would come through either Brendan or myself, just to let you know, with some guidance around the type of questions that, from an assurance point of view, we would expect you to ask. But no, I don't think that's necessary at the moment, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Mason-Sanders, please.
Thank you. Well, I have to admit, I was appalled that our insurance asset records, identified records didn't reconcile and were presented as incomplete. Somebody's not really doing their job properly, are they? And I was surprised that there was no re-tendering exercise. I was at a meeting on Monday and our procurement division within PS2 had plenty of capacity. So I really don't understand why that had to be put on hold. It just seems strange. But I'd like to know who's going to rectify getting these complete and when that's going to happen. And then to go on to page 61, I was surprised actually that there was problems with getting data, and how do we feed back and know that this is going to actually happen in the future? A conversation is needed really with PS2 to make sure that this is happening. Is it a capacity? I know the capacity in accounts has been challenged recently, but if you need the data, you need the data. There's no point in paying you for coming and doing internal audit if you can't do it properly. And I'm beginning to wonder, are our staff adequately trained in the requirements of audit? And just as a thing, I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you very much. It's only a broken ankle, but I am on the road to recovery. Thank you very much.
Good.
Chair, can I just draw your attention to the fact that I have been indicating for about 10 minutes on various issues and you've not called me. Thank you.
Oh, apologies. I can't see that you're. No. Yeah. Mr. Arnold, if you like to be.
Thank you so much. I had hoped to give a section 151 view on the report that's before you. And you know, there is a very significant corpus of opinions there against different reports which are labelled adequate. Now, I think the word adequate is a difficult one because it's almost as if one was at school again and the teacher writes could do better, adequate. But actually this adequate, and Claire will have a view about this, is that it's actually more akin to good. This is a substantive opinion, you know, which says this is generally a reliable system of governance, risk management and control. And I think there are many councils out there, Chair, that would be envious of the spread of opinions that are before you today. So this report really is a good news story. It's a platform for improvement because of course the council will want to have as many as possible within the substantial assurance bracket, but certainly this is not a cause for pessimism at all. Secondly, on the two that have been recorded as limited assurance, bank reconciliation, colleagues in finance have been very hot in dealing with that, and Ellie Stacey, who is with you this morning, and I was speaking about this only recently. So I have a high level of assurance that those issues have been picked up and will continue to be monitored closely as time passes. On insurance, and I did mention earlier about this is something I've been looking into. I'm delighted to tell the committee that actually an insurance retendering process has now been run. I think it's been run very well, and the results of that will be in the public domain very soon. What I can tell the committee is that it will have been a rigorous process that will likely deliver savings to the councils in the partnership in terms of the insurance costs that they need to incur looking forward and in terms of the term of the new contract. So I think the fact that that has been able to be run will be of interest to the audit team when they come back quite properly for their further review in due course. And in looking at insurance, I think we need to remember that there is a system where the council uses to chase up on audit recommendations and make sure that they are implemented. So as I sit before you, I don't have the specific knowledge about the insurance item as I do about bank reconciliation, but I am confident that the system will catch all those and deal with those. And it may well be that, given what I've already described, some of those issues would have been picked up in terms of configuring, envisioning and running the tendering process that I've already described. Now, turning to the service review that I've already referred to, it is my view that strategically, and this is a wider issue than the detailed issues picked up in the audit, that the partnership it would be appropriate to look at the way that risk is managed through the lens of external insurance and indeed internal insurance at this time, and that's because it hasn't been done for some time, and I do believe that continual review is an important place of effective management. So we will be doing that work. It will take some time to execute, but when it has been done, I'm very happy to bring that back here as one of your members, I think maybe Councillor Mossop, indicated. So that's certainly an action we can take, but it won't be in the near future. There will be quite a lot of work to do on that. Turning to the matter of access to data, I don't think we're saying that anyone is denying access to the internal audit team. I think what we're seeing is that because the Lincolnshire County Council is an external organisation to the council, there are inevitably issues around the basis on which access is provided to the various databases within ELDC's set of data structures. And I think it's entirely right that we sit down, Claire and myself, to look through that and investigate whether anything can be done to make that work better, because it would be as appointed internal auditors, it would be, I think, desirable for open system access to exist. That's what I would expect to see if the internal audit team were internal to the council. So I think we'll take that away and see whether anything can be done to deal with that. But I do want to stress there is no suggestion at all that either corporately or individually on a team basis that the auditors can't access the information they require. It's simply the point that Claire was making, that actually, you know, you'd like to have open access so that if you have a sudden unexpected gap in the work programme for whatever reason, you can assign resources in and access the information and do work in a more flexible way and have deeper reflections on it. And I think that is absolutely something that we would want to support. So thank you, Chair, for allowing me to comment on those issues, and I'll rest there for now. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
No, go on.
Go on, Councillor Bristow.
Yes, thank you for that. I think that what Claire was actually saying when we get to it is, and Councillor Moss noted about culture, is it's not just about having, you know, where Claire can access our systems from her home or whatever. It's sitting down with somebody from PSPS and having that person be receptive, having that person have the time and not feel like, you know, I'm trying to get on with the job and you're an annoyance. You know, and so that is what, so again, the assertion that perhaps somebody was hiding something has been routinely refuted. It's just more that I think I think Councillor Mossop is correct. Do we have a cultural issue where people aren't used to sitting down with an external person and understanding what that person's role is, and are they not being freed up from their role for that amount of time? Or is it where they're going to spend 2 days with the internal auditor and everything is going to build up for them to have to then climb out of a pile of work after those couple of days, which would make me not want to sit with an auditor because, you know, I already work long hours and so forth. So I think we've all understood that on the committee here, that it's an issue of more of making sure that the officers are understanding the role of the internal auditor, and that the officers are then being freed up to work with the internal auditor when they do come, realizing that opening our systems to an external party is not in our best interest, etc. Thank you.
Is that what you wanted to say? Yeah, Mr. Arnold, please.
Yeah, just to say that I'm not aware that cultural value does exist within the council, and quite to the contrary. I think the officers that I work with are very open in terms of sharing what they do and affording time to parties that need to understand. So I'm very happy to hear if it's otherwise, so that we can take action to deal with that. But I'm certainly not aware of that. But I'm very happy to speak with Claire offline about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we've thoroughly examined. Oh, Mr. Silcox-Crowe, you got a question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure whether this is one for now or for KPMG, but I think it relates to a piece of work that perhaps we as a committee should be asking internal audit to have some more focus on. KPMG have identified on page 240 and 253, they identified that they had asked for samples of minutes and action logs from senior leadership team meetings, and that these were not in existence. Now how we actually make things happen if we don't have a record of the decisions and we don't have a log of who's taken the responsibility by when, is something I would question. We'll come to it with KPMG, but it's something I would ask this committee that we perhaps ask internal audit to have more of a focus on, and possibly ask for, do some more sampling of other meetings to see whether they have minutes and action logs.
Yeah.
Comment
you
on
want
the minuting in there.
Want to comment?
But perhaps when we get to that report, which is from the external auditor, they might want to, you know, comment more on that at that point, and then we can discuss what you as the committee can discuss what you'd want to see as part of that agenda item. That's probably the best way of dealing with it, so we don't cross agenda items.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Claire. If you can take that back and all those other comments, and this item is for noting and commenting on. So thank you very much for your report. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10. This is the Treasury Annual Report for 2024 to 25. And this is to consider and comment on. And Sean Howsam is here to present this report. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide members with the annual Treasury Report for 2024-25 in accordance with the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Code of Practice on Treasury Management to ensure that best practice is maintained. I propose to go to Appendix 1 and start at page 72. During 2024-25, the following reports have been submitted: an annual Treasury strategy in advance of the year, a mid-year Treasury update, and finally the annual review, which is this report today. In addition to this, the Council has also received quarterly Treasury updates to provide good practice. Paragraph 2 refers to the Council's capital expenditure and financing of that expenditure during 2024-25, and the table at the top of page 73 shows that actual capital expenditure for the year came out at just under £46 million, of which 43,942,000 of that was financed from grants, capital receipts, reserve balances, etc., giving unfinanced capital expenditure or prudential borrowing requirement of just under £2 million. Paragraph 3 provides detailed analysis of the Council's overall borrowing need at the end of the financial year. And page 74, the table at the top of page 74, showed that your opening borrowing requirement was just under £18 million. You had the unfinanced capital expenditure during the year of 1.9 million, less MRP, with the minimum revenue provision payments that have been made, giving an outturn for your borrowing requirement of just under £20 million. There will be an amendment to this table in the report that goes to Council to reflect the leases which are coming into the Council's balance sheet during the year and will be finalised as part of the Council's financial statements. The table at the bottom of page 74 shows that the overall gross borrowing position of the Council is external borrowing of zero. So this, with having an underlying borrowing need of just under £20 million, that shows that the Council is roughly just under £20 million under borrowed. Paragraph 4 shows the Treasury position at the 31st of March 2025, and you'll see from there that the Council had Treasury total investments and cash equivalents of just over £73 million at the 31st of March 2025. On page 76 and 77, there are other splits in relation to those investments, showing the types of investments that the Council had, splits between Treasury and non-Treasury investments, the maturity structure, and the split between fixed and variable interest rates. Paragraph 5 provides information in relation to the strategy for 2025, and this is a commentary provided by MUFG, formerly known as Link, who are our external Treasury advisors. You'll see from the chart the investments, the graph there that shows the investment rates during the year, and the overall trend is that the investment rates have been on a downward trajectory. Bank rate reductions of 0.25% occurred in August, November and February, bringing the headline rate for borrowing down from 5.25% at the start of the year down to 4.5% at the end of the financial year. Paragraph 5.2 refers to the borrowing strategy and control of interest rate risk. During 24-25, the authority maintained an underborrowed position, and this meant that the capital borrowing need, commonly known as the capital finance requirement, was not fully funded with loan debt, as cash supporting the authority's reserve balances and cash flow was used as an interim measure. Paragraph 7 provides information in relation to the investment outturn. The investment policy approved by the authority on the 28th of February 2024. And the resources, the table at the bottom of page 79 shows the resources in comparison with the position at the previous financial year. So we had an opening balance of resources of just under £73 million. And at the end of the financial year, that was just under £62 million, with the main change being capital grants unapplied, with the capital programme being progressed during the year. Quite a lot of the financing of that capital programme came from the grants that have now been applied. In relation to the investments, the average rate achieved on investments was 5.32% on Treasury investments, in comparison with the 3-month overnight rate of 4.72%. The council also has non-Treasury investments, in other words, the property funds, and they achieved a rate of 3.39%, and also £3.9 million in loans to Invest East Lindsey, which achieved a rate of 4.4%. That gave an overall combined rate of 4.72%. If we put those percentages into numbers, for the financial year 2024-25, your original budget for investment income was just over £2.7 million. And at the end of the financial year, the outturn came out at just under £4 million. So an overachievement of just over £1.25 million. Paragraph 8 provides a summary in relation to the economy and interest rates provided by sector or link, our external treasury advisors, but I don't propose to go through that information. It's there for information. And finally, in paragraph 9, you have information in relation to the council's property funds, with the original cost of those property funds of just over £23.6 million. And you'll see from the landscape table on page 82 that the net asset value of those property funds at the end of the financial year was just over £21.25 million. So that gives a overall reduction in value since purchase of £2,347,000, which was a rise again, that there was a rise during the financial year in those values of £343,700. So it's now heading in the right direction again. There is some more information in relation to the property funds, but I don't propose to go through that unless you have any questions on that. So the recommendation is that Audit and Governance Committee scrutinise the annual report for 2024-25 and make any comments to Council when they consider the report on the 16th of July 2025. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Bristow.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you for the report. I think I'm finally starting to understand these after 2 years. So I do have a question on page 66, there, item 2.2, talking about Treasury investment balances, but it talks about all Treasury investments will mature in less than 1 year. My question was, then what? Given the local government reorganization looming, are we reinvesting that, or are we just putting into some kind of, more of a savings kind of scheme, or are we going to spend some of that money as part of the legacy of the district council? Thank you.
Sean, if you want to.
Yes, in relation to that, we regularly have a lot of the Treasury investments are made for periods of time of less than 1 year, over varying periods of time in the year, so they don't all mature at the same point in time in the financial year. We'll have them staggered throughout the year, commonly known as the laddering effect. But what happens is when a loan matures, we will then look at our cash flow position to see if that is still surplus cash. How long can we lend that cash for based on our cash flow forecasts? Those cash flow forecasts take into account all the council's revenue expenditure, capital expenditure, etc. And we have a good indication from the cash flow forecast as to how long those investments that are maturing can be lent out for. We can make investments for greater than a year, but at the moment we aren't choosing to do that because particularly in relation to the horizon, and also what can happen is if you have a change in political group, that can change how they want to spend money, etc. So generally speaking, all investments are made for a period of less than 1 year, and then when those loans mature, we look at that position again and the cash flow position at that time to see what the most beneficial term for the next loan is to be made. Hope that answered the question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Pilkington.
Yeah, a few questions. Page 76, Treasury investments over the course of the year. The amount of Treasury investments in banks went down from 82 to 31%, and from local authorities up from 15% to 53%. I'm just curious to understand the rationale for that. Page 77, exposure to fixed and variable rates on investments over the course of a year. Exposure to fixed rates went down from 71 to 54, and variable rates up from 29% to 46%. I'm just interested to know the rationale for that, because on the face of it, if interest rates are tracking down slowly, you might have more incentive to put something in a fixed rate, a higher fixed rate now, rather than lose interest later on. And then the final question was relating to other issues on page 81. IFRS 9 fair value investments. Is the reason that this paragraph has been included because that same requirement didn't exist in previous years? Is something new in terms of accounting guidelines?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, in relation to the split of the investments between banks and local authorities, what we have in the past, there's been a reluctance to lend to local authorities, but that reluctance has now changed. And the Section 151 officer and the current Section 151 officer now sees that there is less risk in lending to local authorities due to the structure of local authorities and the fact that they are underpinned by effectively central government, rather than investing in banks which provide a little bit more risk, albeit that depends on the credit ratings of those financial institutions. But no local authority has, well, a local authority isn't allowed to go bankrupt. Effectively, what will happen is it's likely to be bailed out by central government. And there is no local authority that has defaulted on making a repayment of a loan, as far as I am aware. So there is a lot more investments with local authorities, and when you get towards the end of the financial year, the yields on those loans are considerably higher than the banks are paying as well. So it's a double win for the local authority. You're getting a higher rate of return and perceivably less risk. In relation to your second point, if I can remember where that was.
77.
877.
Fixed rate.
Oh yeah, fixed rate variable. Right, my apologies for that. As the council's overall investment balances reduce, your percentage in relation to variable rate is likely to increase, because all the short-term cash that you hold for day-to-day cash flow requirements is all at a variable rate. Your fixed rates tend to be your loans to financial institutions, local authorities, etc. So those rates are more secure, obviously because they are fixed. But unfortunately, as the council's cash balances go down, you have to keep the same amount of value of cash short term to meet your cash flow requirements. So generally speaking, what happens is the variable rate will go up, but also your property fund investments fall into that variable rate as well, because the rates achieved on your property fund investments does differ on a month-by-month basis. And finally, the point in relation to IFRS 9, yes, that's just to point out that historically you used to be able to keep your portfolio, your property fund investments at book value, but legislation changes a few years ago meant that you had to have those included in your accounts at fair value, assessed based on the underlying value of those assets. So that's just stating that the accounts are being produced on a fair value basis. So those funds will be reflected in the accounts based on the value of those funds, not the book cost.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Mossop, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, as always. I just wanted to seek a little bit of assurance in terms of Invest East Lindsey. There was a repayment in the year from 24 to 25. Have we had any delay in any of the interest payments over the year from our Almo, or has it all been timely and repaid? Because I remember it being right on the final deadline at the end of last year. And has there been any renegotiation on repayments over the last year that's going to make a difference to this, or has it just stayed the same?
Thank you for that. Yes, in relation to the interest payments, the interest is due on a quarterly basis, and during the financial year, the interest payments were made on time, and also based on the revised agreement, loan agreement for all the outstanding loans that Invest East Lindsey have with East Lindsey District Council. That loan agreement has now rescheduled loan repayments. In accordance with that, there was a payment due of £200,000 on the 31st of March 2025, and I can confirm that that repayment has been made. But in relation to your final point, yes, the loans to Invest East Lindsey have been renegotiated in relation to the repayment terms, and that has been taken into account and will be reflected in these accounts in my reports in the future.
Can I just ask then, Sean, is that another renegotiation and in the current year, for the current year going forwards? Is that what you're saying, or is this the negotiation that was done prior to year end? Are we on another renegotiation?
This is the first formal renegotiation as far as I'm aware, but from working from memory, the repayment terms are £200,000 per annum over the until such time as the loans are repaid. But there are some years where there are slightly more to reflect the fact that the actual individual loans aren't divisible by the £200,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else has got,
I'm just going to congratulate Sean on getting a return of over 5%. I chair a charity and we haven't had a return anywhere near it, so I'd like to make use of your services, please, because you've done jolly well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just one point on the Invest East Lindsey information, something that comes up later in this agenda on KPMG's report is the need to have more information from Invest East Lindsey on the on these Treasury annual these Treasury reports, particularly the ones that come to us frequently. So is that going to be? I mean, that is also not an action that's due just yet, but will be going forward. So we'll be seeing more information regarding Invest East Lindsey on these reports going forward.
I always provide the information in relation to how much interest has been received on the loans in respect of East Lindsey, but it isn't a treasury management function to effectively scrutinise the position in relation to Invest East Lindsey. All I deal with is the East Lindsey element of the loans to Invest East Lindsey, so I wouldn't have thought it's appropriate for me to be including anything else in my report, apart from the fact that we've got X amount of loans with Invest East Lindsey at an X percentage rate, which has earned an interest. Fair enough. If the loan repayments haven't been made, I would expect to include that in my report. It's difficult that I don't have access to the information to include in my report other information that you may require.
Oh, okay. That's
So that may be a report that you may need through a different route.
possibly, yes. I think that's going to come up later anyway. Right. Thank you very much for your report, John. And okay, we'll move on to item 11, which is the annual governance statement for 2024 to 25. This is to review and approve, so we will need to vote on this. And this is Suzanne Rolfe to present, I think.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to, Yeah, happy to provide the background to this. So this is a standard report to the Audit and Governance Committee to provide assurance on the Council's governance framework, and covers some set headings such as vision, codes of conduct, decision making, etc., which you'll see in the tables. It is quite prescriptive so that we make sure we cover all governance elements, so they are provided to us and we report against those. This report is an update on last year's document, so it includes any changes that have taken place in the last 12 months. Towards the end of the document, there's a table. I did make a note of the page number, but I've written so many notes from the risk element. I think it's from page 98. There's a table there with the actions that were for the current year. So in-year monitoring has been completed. The no assurance audit of procurement cards and the limited assurance audit of payroll reconciliation have had their follow-up audits to confirm that the controls have improved. The alignment of the constitutions is on hold pending LGR, and similarly the member development groups will remain at individual councils rather than relaunching partnership wide. So that table gives an update on the actions that have happened, and there are 2 new actions identified at the end of the document for the year ahead. So that's around budget setting and MTFS, and the potential plans for remote meetings and proxy voting, which you mentioned in the chair's update at the beginning of the meeting. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bristow.
Hello again. Just a couple of things I just wanted to be clear on. On page 99, the second item on the table, monitoring of controls around payroll reconciliation following limited assurance audit. So am I correct that in 23-24, we had limited assurance around payroll reconciliation, and then in 24-25, we then had limited assurance in bank reconciliation? Have I understood that correctly?
I'll need to double check the wording to make sure that's correct. I don't have that to hand in front of me, and I don't want to confuse anything. So let me double check and come back to you on that.
Okay. And the other one was, again, echoing a question that was asked earlier on 6.1, why do we have reg assurance up from 0 to 1% when elsewhere it was shown as nil? So I think I know it's 1%, but it's still, it's 1%. So where is that reflecting, and why is it different here and the internal audit hasn't picked up the same thing? And I know internal audit looks at processes, you know, so is that the answer, is that internal audit? But yeah, thank you, John. Yeah.
Yeah, effectively, that's that combined assurance report, which Claire kindly talked us through earlier, the differences between the two. So I think it related to financial situation at the time. And you can see in section 7.1, the action which Suzanne has referred to includes changing and improving the governance and processes around the formation of the budget preparation for next year. So I think they're all tied together. So that's the linkage that you're seeing from the combined assurance into the action that's in the AGS.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would love to find out, is the monitoring of controls around payroll reconciliation following limited assurance something that was on the internal audit 23-24, and then because we're limited again in 24-25, but this time not on payroll reconciliation but on bank reconciliation. So I'd like to know if we're still having reconciliation issues, is what it would appear to the layman. So thank you.
Thank you.
I will come back to you.
Ellie Stacey's got a.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, you are correct. Payroll reconciliation did have a follow-up audit in 2025, and that was a substantial opinion, so that has significantly improved. And just to note that we are actually undergoing a new payroll project at the moment to implement a new payroll system, so that will further enhance those controls as well.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Are there any further questions on that? Mr. Silcox-Crowe, please.
On page 98, the review of effectiveness, the effectiveness of the governance framework has been evaluated in the following ways. senior leadership team, the senior leadership team review corporate responsibility, blah, 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 blah. My question is, given the observation from KPMG about lack of minutes and action logs, how do we know that this governance is being carried out by the SLT?
Thank you.
John, want to pick that up? John's on SLT, so he can answer that better than I can.
John Medler?
Yeah, I think this is a statement of where governance where you get that assurance in all the various governance frameworks that there are across or parts of the governance framework across the organisation. You can see this committee is listed in there and also SLT. So I can confirm to you as a committee that SLT meets on a monthly basis to review corporate governance. There are agendas, papers and actions that come from that meeting which are followed up by officers. So that is taking place and is in place across the organisation.
So the sample that KPMG settled upon was the one aberration.
Question. John?
I think they were looking at the efficiency meeting specifically. James might be able to comment on that, but in terms of this corporate governance, which picks up financial issues, it picks up risk, performance, information governance, changes to key changes to legislation. That meeting is in place, and that happens every month. And there's papers that are produced, and SLT reviews those key issues. It's also attended by the head of internal audit manager and the director of PSPS. So some of our key other stakeholders are involved in that meeting as well. So that meeting is taking place and is recorded and actions taken from it. And that includes looking at audit recommendations as they come forward as well.
Thank you. James, do you want to comment on that at all, or?
Yeah. As John says on page 253 of the meeting pack, our performance improvement points was around the need for the council to keep a formal log of key decisions and actions made in relation to the identification of efficiencies within the budget setting and monitoring process, specifically due to its continued importance and ongoing importance in the future around financial planning and sustainability. So we haven't actually noted anything specific. Obviously, there's a couple of other points in the report around the formalisation of all our aspects around budget monitoring action plans as well, which continues to be live. But there's no specific recommendations in our report around unmandated SLT meetings or actions.
Thank you. I think that's clear, isn't it? Mr. Pilkington.
I'm still a bit confused. Are there minutes of the SLT meetings, and are there actual action log documents that can be provided to internal, external auditors when requested?
Thank you. I noticed Brendan's got his hand up. Brendan.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I was just going to deal with the earlier point actually around meetings that were built around the efficiency programme and consideration. So item 14 on the agenda today describes a new process in preparation of the 26-27 budget, and the whole process of decision making around those efficiencies, savings, cost reductions and investments that will feed into the 26-27 budget. Those will be recorded in a very different way, with significant amounts of rigour. So I thought it was worth feeding that into the committee's thinking, if the point that KPMG were raising was about savings and efficiencies, because that is set to operate differently, and there will be more meetings with more stakeholders, more people, and we will have a rigorous recording process to make sure that all of that is recorded accurately for the to support the inputs to the budget that are presented ultimately to council in February or March next year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Macon Standard.
Well, even on page 89, I could argue with it says ELDC has a duty under the Local Government Act to make arrangements to secure continuous improvement in the way its functions are exercised, blah, blah, blah. I think if you did a straw poll of councillors, they might have a very different opinion of continuous improvement. To go on to page 90, where we about portfolio holders. Review of current performance against priorities reported to portfolio holders. There used to be in the past notes of portfolio meetings which came down to ordinary councillors. We don't get that anymore. So how do we know if current performance is performing? Because we don't get those minutes anymore, and they were really important and very useful, and it just fizzled out. Could we have those reinstated, please? Because then we would be able to keep track of the fact that the governance is being carried out to our liking. Yeah.
Thank you. Can we add that request as an action, please? Okay. If are there any further comments on this? Yeah.
I got an answer.
Can I just answer Mr. Pilkinson's point? Yes, there are actions that come from those corporate governance meetings. They are recorded. So once the items have been discussed and debated, any actions that are to be taken away are recorded and then followed up at the next corporate governance meeting to see if they've been implemented at that SLT meeting. And just to pick up Councillor Sanders' point about performance, all of the KPIs and performance metrics are reported on a quarterly basis through to the overview committee. So they're scrutinised by members in line with the governance framework that we have for the authority. Thank you.
Thank you. So this report is for voting on. It's recommended the committee reviews and approves the annual governance statement. So I'd like to propose that, and seconded by Councillor Makinson-Sanders. All those in favour, please raise your hands, and any against. That's carried. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Cold.
The AC has certainly come on, hasn't it? Right. Calling for
just 5 minutes just to stand up and move my legs because I'm frozen.
Does everyone else want a comfort break? Yeah, we'll have just a 5-minute comfort break. So I make it 12:10. Back at 12:15. Thank you.